If you believe that you might be dyslexic, you're in the right place. I have a dyslexia test for you, and in all likelihood, it's the most in-depth and detailed dyslexia screening that you will be able to find on YouTube. It is based on research, and I have done my best to make it as accurate as I can, so that you finally get the clarity that you're looking for. If you're new here, my name is Arije. I'm a coach for dyslexic adults, and I also have a MA in Education Studies where already back then I focused extensively on the topic of dyslexia. And I'm also dyslexic myself. Here's how it works. This test has different parts to check things that people with dyslexia often find tricky. Some of these are more clear-cut than others, while some rely more on your own reflection. On my website, you can find this PDF for free to follow along with this video. The link is in the description. It includes a diagram to keep track of your scores, as well as additional information to make this screening more accurate. We start off by taking a look at your reading speed and whether or not you're reading at the pace of an average adult. Then we're taking a look at something called RAN, where you very fast name different common objects and also colors. After that, we're looking at your spelling, then at something called phonemic awareness, and that's your ability to manipulate and play with the sounds within words. And then it's all about memory. And lastly, we're taking a look at whether or not you experienced something similar to the typical dyslexic experience. Before we start, just a quick disclaimer. This is a research-based screening tool designed to help you identify signs of dyslexia. That being said, it is not a replacement for a formal diagnosis. If you need accommodations or legal recognition, you will have to go to a licensed psychologist or another qualified professional in your area. One of the most common signs of dyslexia is a reduced reading speed. But how slow is actually slow? And are you reading at the pace of a typical dyslexic, or are you closer to the average? Let's find out. I prepared a text for you, and you should read it at your natural pace. When the time runs out, please take note of where you left off. We want to know how far you got into the text. Okay, so let's go. If you're an average reader, then you have managed to read all the way to the end of the text in the 30 seconds that I gave you. And that means you read around 200 to 250 words per minute. Now, if you are within the dyslexic range, then you will be able to read 100 to 150 words per minute. And that would be this area. That being said, some dyslexics may read a bit faster or slower than this range. But what's consistent is that we tend to read more slowly than the average. I myself was able to read up until the word discouraged. At this point, I would like to take a moment to bust a myth. A lot of people tend to believe that if you read well, you must be smart, or if you struggle to read, you must be stupid. But here's the thing. Research has looked into this and found that the two things, so your reading ability and your intelligence, have barely anything to do with each other. So if you've ever been called stupid because you struggle to read, know that those people didn't know what they're talking about, and they made assumptions about you based on misinformation. Now we come to the rating, and here's how it works. If you give yourself a 0, then that would mean that this sign of dyslexia does not apply to you at all. If you score between 0 and 30, you're close to the average of a non-dyslexic, so it's not a very strong indicator. A score between 30 and 70 means it was difficult for you, and it reflects the dyslexic pattern, but some parts may have felt easier than others. And if you rate yourself above 70, that's a strong indicator, and it clearly matches the kinds of challenges people with dyslexia often face. Regarding my reading speed, I've given myself a 80 since it is a clear indicator for me. Another strong predictor of reading difficulties, and therefore also an indicator of dyslexia, is RAN, and that stands for Rapid Automatized Naming. And it's your ability to quickly name everyday objects, or for example, colors. And that matters for reading a lot because also there we have a visual representation, and then in your head you need to make the connection to the meaning that's behind it. So for this exercise, I'm going to give you 20 different objects, and I want you to name them as quickly as you can. And remember how far you get. Now let's take a look at the results. So if you got up until the last row, then that would still be considered in the range of normal or average. Now, if you were able to name less objects, then that would start to point towards dyslexia. Keep in mind that this isn't a strict cutoff. It's more an estimate of what non-dyslexic adults typically are able to do according to research. We're going to do this exercise one more time, but this time with colors. Also here, try to name them as quickly as you can and try to remember how far you get. People tend to name colors a little bit faster than objects. So here, this area would be within the range of normal. And if you're somewhere over here, then that would be an indicator of dyslexia. In this case, my score was close to the average of a non-dyslexic adult, but still in the range where it starts to indicate dyslexia. Since it's a weaker sign for me, I'm giving myself a score of around 30. Next up is spelling, and you might be thinking that your spelling is bad, but it's worth checking if that is still the case now that you're an adult and some years have passed. I certainly think that my spelling is bad, and that thought is actually accurate, but that might not be true for you. So let's grab a piece of paper and a pencil, and I'm gonna give you a couple of words to write down. Let's get started. So here's the first word, necessary. And the next one, receive. Separate. Accommodate. And the next, definitely. So out of these 5 words, I got 1 correct, and the rest I spelled kind of creatively. Now, difficult for dyslexics would be to identify double consonants and where to put them. Also, silent letters are an issue because we need to remember that they're present, even if you can't hear them. And then, in general, we tend to listen to a word and then write it accordingly. But English is a very irregular language, so that means that that goes wrong quite frequently. Spelling has always been difficult for me, so unsurprisingly, also here I made a lot of mistakes, and that matches the profile of a dyslexic. So I gave myself a rating of 80 here. The next part is all about phonemic awareness, and it's about your ability to identify and manipulate the different sound structures within our language. It's not about the letters, it's purely sound-based. And research has identified that this is a core issue among dyslexics. Rhymes are one way to get an impression on whether or not this is difficult for you. So which word rhymes with gear? Mirror, clear, or chair? Your phonemic awareness can also be tested by taking a look at how aware of syllables you are. So how many syllables are in the word authenticity? That will be 5. And can you tell me what the word street sounds like without the S? That will be treat. And what would the word net sound like, but backwards? That will be 10. And which word rhymes with claim? Blame, calm, or climb? Can you tell me what the word clap sounds like without the L? That will be cap. And how many syllables are in the word opportunity? That will be 5. And what would the word trap sound like backwards? That will be part. And which word rhymes with orange? Hinge, porridge, or storage? Now, if this is confusing, then that makes total sense because none of these are a true rhyme. But can you hear why? Can you tell me what the word slip would sound like, but backwards? That would be pills. And can you tell me what the word frame would sound like without the R? That would be fame. And how many syllables are in the word entrepreneur? That would be 4. My scores for phonemic awareness were a bit mixed. Some tasks were easy, others I found more difficult. So overall, I feel like I'm somewhere in the middle. So I give myself a score of 50. Another telltale sign of dyslexia is trouble with your working memory. And that might look like you forgetting to turn off the stove, or after you've left your home, you might not remember whether or not you closed the door. Also, dates and times might be difficult for you to keep in mind. Now, all of those things indicate dyslexia. However, let's try to make it a bit more objective with a digit span task. For that, I'm going to give you 6 numbers and I would like you to repeat them back to me in the same order that I gave them to you. So here we go. 5, 9, 8, 7, 4, 3. And another one. 8, 3, 2, 9, 6, 7. Now we're going to do something similar, but this time I would like you to repeat the numbers back to me in reverse order. So if I'm going to give you the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, then the correct answer would be 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so here's the first one. 9, 3, 1, 8. And another one. 7, 3, 4, 9. Non-dyslexics tend to be able to repeat 6 digits normally and 4 in reverse order. So if you're not able to do that, then that points towards dyslexia. When I did this, my digit span forward was mostly okay. Backward was more difficult. So I would say that for me, this is a clear indicator of dyslexia. Therefore, I give myself a rating of 70. This next part is based on a concept from learned therapy, and for me personally, it has been truly eye-opening. So I'm going to explain to you the patterns bit by bit, and for each part, I'm also going to add questions so that you can see if this is something that you experienced in childhood. If you're dyslexic, it's highly likely that you've experienced a version of the cycle in your life. You don't have to answer yes to every single question. It's more about the big picture and whether or not it resonates with you. So let's get into it. The interaction between the social environment and the performance area is the beginning of our cycle. And the important players in the social environment are the parents and teachers. So the teacher gives a task to the student, like for example, read this book until the end of the month. And because of the dyslexia, fundamental skills necessary to complete the task are missing. So that means that the results are worrying. This is the first part of the cycle, and now we come to the questions. Would you say that you regularly received tasks that felt unmanageable to you, or tasks that were simply beyond your ability? Like, for example, read this book chapter until the day after tomorrow. Also, would you say that your performance was significantly below that of your peers? And did others, like teachers and parents, voice concern about your situation? Now let's get back to the model and look at the second part. All of this influences the relationships that we dyslexics have with our social environment. Because teachers and parents are worried, they often exert pressure on us dyslexics, and punishments are common. This study found, in fact, that if you are dyslexic, you have around a 7 times higher risk of experiencing physical abuse. There are different ways dyslexics tend to react to the pressure and the punishments that they receive. One way would be to fully submit to whatever is asked of them. Another way would be to push back. And in our model, this is officially classified as deconstructive compensation. Let's find out if this is also part of your story. So let's take a look at the questions. Would you say that you were punished or put under a lot of pressure because of your performance in school? Also, would that then lead to tension between you and your teachers or you and your parents? Now, all of this tends to have an impact on your self-image or self-esteem. Did that happen? And then we tend to react to all of this in a certain way. And here are some typical reactions. Social withdrawal, people-pleasing, and also you might have played the role of a class clown in school. If the negative reinforcements keep piling up, then at some point the performance area itself, so tasks that have to do with reading and writing, will start to create anxiety and feelings of shame and other negative emotions. A result of that might be that the student says to him or herself, well, let's not do this. Let's not do the homework. Let's not go to school because all those emotions are just too much to deal with. So now let's get back to you and to the questions. Would you say that tasks relating to reading and writing create negative emotions for you? Let's say stress or anxiety or feelings of shame. Also, when you react to those emotions, does avoidance play a role? Is procrastination a part of your life, or also perfectionism might be a reaction to the situation? Here's an overview of all the questions, and for me as a dyslexic myself, I can say that all of them resonate with me to a certain extent. So I'm giving myself a rating of 100. This doesn't mean that these things are all still happening to me, but I do have to recognize that at one point or another, they were part of my dyslexic experience. If all or many of these elements point to dyslexia, then there's actually a good chance that you are dyslexic. And for some of you, this might be a relief because suddenly you possibly have a very real and valid explanation for the things that have happened to you in school. And that can be really powerful. Or you might be watching this and you're a bit confused, not entirely sure what to think about it. If that's you, there are a couple of points that I would like to make. Reading and writing is generally a lot harder for dyslexics, but that does not mean that you cannot excel in different areas. Dyslexia is a specific difficulty, not a general problem. In the past, you might have felt like you're disappointing the people around you, but the truth of the matter is that dyslexics can learn to read and write effectively, especially if we're getting the help we need early on. And the people around us had a job to help us. And if they didn't or just didn't know how, then that is not our fault. So we shouldn't blame ourselves for something that never was fully in our control in the first place. Also, I would like to tell you that having dyslexia does not mean that you cannot be successful. Now, even if you have now a better understanding of what has happened to you, if you look closer at dyslexia, you'll realize that it affects more areas than you might think. And gaining clarity is step one. But after that, the question becomes, how do you move forward with this new knowledge? And on my channel, you'll find a lot of content to help you to do just that. And if you don't want to do it all by yourself, then feel free to reach out. See you in the next one.